The Alien War Council chamber was a place designed to make mortals feel small. Its black basalt walls were cut with lines of molten gold that glowed faintly, casting shadows that danced like serpents. Above, the vaulted ceiling stretched high enough to contain a warship's bridge, and every sound echoed with ceremonial weight. At the center of the hall stood General Zithal, Supreme Commander of the Claw Dominion's expansionary fleet. His body was a towering edifice of armored carapace, each segment engraved with the victories of campaigns past. His 6 multifaceted eyes glimmered cold and sharp, reflecting the starlight that filtered through the open skylight above. To the Dominion, he was more than a commander, he was an architect of conquest, a strategist whose mind never bent, whose will never broke. And today, before the War Council, he was forced to speak about the strangest enemy they had yet encountered, humanity. The Terrans, Zithal began, his voice a gravelly thunder, are weaker than any species we have faced. Their muscle density is pathetic compared to the Claw. Their bones fracture under pressures a lava could endure. Their lifespans are insultingly short. Their senses are dulled, their reflexes slow, their weapons, laughable imitations of true military craft. Around the chamber, dozens of Dominion generals clattered their claws in agreement. The hive chorus hummed, a low resonance of satisfaction. To them, Earth species was already written off as nothing but another easy conquest. And yet, Zithal's voice rumbled deeper, almost reluctant. They do not break. Their soldiers, fragile though they are, hold their lines even when collapse would mean mercy. Their civilians, when displaced, rebuild on ruins. And when one dies, a dozen more rise to take their place. This earned a ripple of unease from the gathered commanders. The Dominion had crushed countless empires before, and yet this enemy lingered in resistance long past what logic dictated. Zithal's mandibles clicked together in frustration. They are irritating. Like insects that refuse to die. But insects they remain. And when the Dominion moves in full strength, they will scatter. A smaller general raised his talons, respectfully. Supreme Commander, may I ask, if they are so weak, why then has the subjugation fleet not yet triumphed over their colonies? Zithal's head tilted, his eyes narrowing. Because weakness does not explain them. The chamber hushed. He leaned forward, resting one clawed hand against the edge of the war table. Holographic projections flickered to life above it, human soldiers in battle, holding trenches on shattered moons, repairing orbital cannons with bare hands, planting crops in poisoned soil. None of it looked extraordinary, yet all of it whispered of something deeper, something the Claw did not understand. Their biology is frail. Their technology is uneven. And yet, there is a resilience, a refusal to surrender. Something beyond strategy. Something instinctive. Another general hissed, dismissive. My lord, perhaps they are too foolish to recognize defeat. Perhaps, Zithal conceded. His eyes flicked toward the holoscreen showing Earth itself, its blue oceans, green continents, storms the size of continents swirling across the surface. Or perhaps, there is something about their world we have overlooked. That drew silence again. The Dominion understood the power of environment. Harsh worlds bred harsh species. Most advanced civilizations emerged from planets of balanced danger, enough challenge to cultivate strength, but not so much as to extinguish growth. Earth, though, was a statistical anomaly. A death world, according to Dominion classification. Its storms could shatter mountains. Its predators were cunning and lethal. Its plants carried poisons, its climate swung from blistering heat to icebound wastelands. And yet, somehow, humans thrived there. Zithal turned slowly, surveying the chamber. I intend to see this world for myself. I will descend upon their home soil, and I will uncover what force shields these fragile creatures from extinction. Only then will I break them completely. The council erupted into hissing approval. To witness the Supreme Commander himself descend was a rare event, one that promised decisive conquest. But even as they clattered their claws, a strange unease gnawed at the back of Zithal's mind. He could not explain it, but he felt it, like the faint tremor before a planetary quake, like the pressure of a storm building unseen. 3 weeks later, the Dominion warship Harbinger of Clarity entered orbit around Earth. Its shadow blotted out the light over entire regions as it descended into low atmosphere, armored hull gleaming like a blackened sun. General Zithal stood on the observation deck, staring down at the planet that had defied them. From here, Earth looked deceptively gentle, a sphere of blue and green, swirled with white. Almost inviting. Such a fragile cradle, Zithal muttered. And yet it births defiance. His adjutant, a younger officer named Vekril, bowed low. Shall we begin the inspection, my lord? The Terran colonies resist, but the homeworld remains strangely unbroken. Yes, Zithal rasped. Prepare a landing party. I will walk their soil. The drop shuttle descended through roiling clouds, lightning flashing in violent forks around them. The air itself seemed alive, turbulent, snarling as if the world resented their intrusion. Zithal's armored frame swayed with the motion, but his stance remained unshaken. He had walked through volcanic ash storms and the vacuum of breached stations. A little atmospheric turbulence was nothing. When the shuttle doors hissed open, the smell struck him first. Air rich with oxygen, damp with rain, alive with the sense of a million organisms laid together. To a claw warrior accustomed to sterile ship atmospheres and hive-controlled colonies, the sensation was overwhelming. The soil was damp beneath his clawed feet. Trees towered overhead, their trunks coiled with vines, their crowns whispering in the storm winds. Creatures moved unseen through the underbrush. Every shadow seemed alive. This world, Zithal murmured, his eyes scanning. It breathes hostility. And yet, it nurtures them. Vekril clicked uneasily. Perhaps their stubbornness is only environmental conditioning, my lord. A reflex. A beast clings to life because it knows no better. Perhaps, Zithal said again. But his mandibles twitched, as though doubting his own words. Then he heard it. Laughter. The sound carried faintly through the storm, light and carefree. Not the bark of soldiers, not the bitter cry of resistance fighters, but the shrill, unguarded laughter of children. Zithal froze. Slowly, he turned his head toward the sound. Through the trees, across a rise of wet stone, he glimpsed movement. Small forms darting among the rocks, climbing, leaping. Human children. No older than larvae, their limbs still thin, their bodies unarmored. Yet they scrambled up jagged cliffs slick with rain as though the danger did not exist. They swung from branches that could snap under weight. They splashed through rivers swollen with storm water, laughing as the currents dragged at their legs. One child slipped on wet stone, tumbling down a slope toward sharp rocks below. Zithal tensed instinctively, certain this fragile creature would be shattered. But the child twisted mid-fall, arms flailing until fingers caught a branch. He dangled for a moment, then hauled himself up, laughing harder than before. The other children cheered, clapping their hands. Zithal's 6 eyes narrowed. Impossible, he whispered. For all their fragility, these humans were not timid. They were not cautious. They played amid dangers that would kill most Dominion young. Where claw hatchlings would cower until their exoskeletons hardened, human children laughed at death, danced with it, treated peril as nothing more than a game. And in that instant, Zithal understood something that unsettled him more than any weapon ever could. If this was how their children lived, what did that make their adults? General Zithal did not move for several minutes. His armored frame stood motionless in the rain, 6 eyes fixed on the laughing human children across the ridge. The storm howled around him, raindrops clattering against his carapace like falling stones, yet he heard only their voices, their unguarded shrieks of joy as they dared the world to harm them. Finally, he spoke, his voice a low rumble. Vekril. Record this. The adjutant's talons tapped on a console, capturing the images. His antennae twitched uneasily. My lord, they are merely larvae. Untrained. Reckless. This is not significant. Zithal's mandibles clicked sharply. Not significant? On a world classified as a death world, where predators hunt with venom and storms split mountains, their young play as though such dangers were nothing. Do you not see? This is not recklessness. It is nature. Vekril lowered his eyes. He did not understand, not yet. Few claw could. The Dominion was a civilization of order, of safety through control. Hatchlings were nurtured in armored nurseries, shielded from hazards until their shells hardened. To lose even one was an unforgivable inefficiency. But here was a species that allowed its young to dance with danger, and in doing so, forged strength not from safety, but from survival. Zithal could not look away. One child, slightly older than the others, stood at the edge of a cliff where the river raged far below. The others shouted at him, daring him. He spread his arms, grinning wide, and hurled himself into the air. Vekril hissed in horror. But instead of death, the boy struck the water with a practiced twist, vanishing beneath the foaming current. Seconds stretched, then he burst from the surface downstream, sputtering, laughing, triumphant. The others cheered wildly. Zithal's claws curled into the soil. They leap into death, to feel alive. A strange unease stirred in his chest, a sensation he had not felt in decades, doubt. For if this was how they raised their young, perhaps the Dominion's assumption of weakness had been a grave miscalculation. That evening, back aboard the Harbinger of Clarity, Zithal summoned his inner circle of strategists. The council chamber aboard the ship was smaller than the Grand Hall on Claw Prime, but no less imposing. The walls pulsed faintly with bioluminescent veins, feeding energy into the ship's systems. The generals gathered, clicking their mandibles in anticipation. Zithal wasted no time. I have seen the humans on their homeworld. I have witnessed their larvae. The chamber rustled with confusion. One commander tilted his armored head. Their larvae? With respect, Supreme Commander, what relevance do infants have to the Dominion's conquest? Zithal's gaze swept across them, sharp and unyielding. On a Deathworld, their children swim in rivers that could drag an adult claw to the depths. They climb cliffs slick with rain. They laugh at falls that would cripple our warriors. They treat danger as play. And in surviving it, they grow. The chamber stilled. Some generals exchanged uneasy glances. Others chittered skeptically. One finally spoke. Perhaps, my lord, they are simply wasteful. Many must die in such recklessness. If they sacrifice their young so casually, they weaken themselves. Zithal's mandibles parted in a low, guttural hiss. And yet, their numbers swell. Their colonies spread faster than we can burn them. For every one that falls, 10 more rise. Tell me, does that sound like weakness? Silence followed. No one dared answer. Zithal leaned forward, his claws pressing into the table's surface. You mistake fragility for weakness. But fragility is not weakness, it is adaptability. Their bodies break, and so they learn to heal. Their worlds scar them, and so they endure. Even their larvae face death before they can speak. And in facing it, they become unyielding. The general shifted uneasily. The Dominion had always believed strength came from control, from breeding warriors in protected hives and perfecting their biology. But this enemy thrived in chaos. Their very fragility forged resilience. Finally, Vekril spoke, voice hesitant. My lord, if what you say is true, then humanity cannot be broken in the ways we know. Zithal's eyes glimmered. Precisely. The next day, Zithal returned planetside. He demanded to see not soldiers, but civilians. He walked among ruined towns where storms had torn roofs from homes, yet found humans already hammering new beams into place. He saw families planting crops in soil still wet with floodwater, laughing as though the disaster had been nothing more than inconvenience. He watched a mother scold her child for wandering too close to a predator's den, then calmly chase the beast away with nothing but fire and shouts. Everywhere he turned, humanity defied logic. They were not the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the most advanced. But they endured. And more than endured, they thrived. Zithal found himself haunted by the image of their children. One evening, as the sun bled red across the horizon, he stood overlooking a human settlement. The air was thick with the scent of smoke and rain. Behind him, Vekril approached cautiously. My lord, the adjutant said, you have studied them for many days. What is your conclusion? Zithal did not turn. His voice was low, almost reverent. They are not weak. They are inevitable. Vekril's antennae twitched in confusion. I do not understand. Zithal finally faced him, eyes blazing. Do you not see? Every other species we have conquered clung to safety. They hid their young from danger. They sheltered their people from hardship. They built walls to keep death at bay. And so, when the Dominion came, when those walls fell, they crumbled. He gestured toward the human settlement, where children still played amid half-repaired ruins. But these creatures, they grow with death. They raise their young in it. To them, hardship is not an enemy, it is a teacher. Every storm makes them stronger. Every fall teaches them to rise. They do not fear the world, they embrace it. The words hung heavy in the stormlit air. For the first time in centuries, Zithal felt something he could not name. It was not fear, not exactly. But it was close. He looked again at the children, climbing broken walls and laughing as if the world itself were a game. And he realized, with a clarity that chilled him to his core, that humanity's greatest weapon was not their armies, nor their machines. It was this, a culture, a nature, a spirit that taught even their weakest to stare death in the face, and smile. The Dominion war machine struck Earth's outer colonies like a hammer. Orbital bombardments reduced cities to ash, and hive legions swept across continents with precision. Other species would have fractured, surrendered, begged for mercy. But humanity did not. Zithal stood at the command dais of the Harbinger of Clarity, watching the live feeds. Human resistance fighters crawled out of burning rubble to mount counterattacks. Pilots flew battered craft against Dominion warships, sometimes ramming them when weapons failed. On the ground, civilians armed with tools, pipes, even stones threw themselves against armored troops. It was madness. It was chaos. It was working. The Dominion should have crushed them quickly. Instead, every victory came at terrible cost. Every conquered city bled the Dominion's strength. And still, more humans rose to fight. Zithal felt the unease in his officers. They could sense it too, though none dared voice it. The humans were not acting like prey. They were acting like predators who refused to recognize the Dominion as superior. When the Harbinger descended again, Zithal demanded to witness the resistance firsthand. He did not want reports filtered through officers. He needed to see. The shuttle touched down near the ruins of a Terran stronghold. Smoke stained the sky, and shattered concrete sprawled like broken teeth across the ground. Dominion banners had already been planted in the soil, symbols of conquest. But the area was not silent. Gunfire crackled in the distance, screams echoed, and the sharp thunder of human weapons answered Dominion rifles. Zithal advanced with his guards, towering over the battlefield. His armored limbs carried him effortlessly across terrain that made his officers stumble. Ahead, he saw them, human soldiers, ragged and blooded, outnumbered 5-1. Yet they fought with a ferocity that clawed at his mind. One woman, her uniform torn and blood matting her hair, charged a Dominion warrior twice her size. Her weapon had jammed, so she swung it like a club, smashing against armored plating until the barrel bent. When she was finally struck down, another soldier vaulted over her body, screaming, firing wildly until his rifle overheated in his hands. It should have been pitiful. It should have been laughable. And yet, Zithal's chest tightened as he watched. These creatures did not fight as if they expected to live. They fought as if their deaths themselves carried weight, as if every fallen soldier added strength to the next. Then he saw something that made his mandibles twitch in disbelief. A group of civilians, farmers by their dress, emerged from the ruins carrying improvised explosives. They hurled themselves at Dominion armor, detonating in blinding fire. When the smoke cleared, a war machine lay crippled, its limbs mangled. The farmers were gone, reduced to ash, but their sacrifice carved open the battlefield for others to advance. Vekril muttered in disgust. They waste themselves. Zithal's eyes never left the scene. No. They wield themselves. As the battle raged, his gaze shifted to a ridge beyond the chaos. There, children crouched in the shadows, eyes wide, watching their parents fight. They were not weeping. They were not cowering. They watched with solemn silence, as though memorizing every strike, every sacrifice. And when one fighter fell, a boy no older than 10 darted forward, grabbed the dropped weapon, and dragged it back toward the defenders. Zithal's claws flexed involuntarily. He could see the future in that child's face. Humanity was not simply fighting for survival. They were teaching their young, in fire and blood, how to carry on when their elders fell. He realized then what the Dominion had never understood. They were not at war with a species. They were at war with a cycle. Every human who died became fuel for the next generation's fury. Every child who survived became harder, sharper, stronger. To exterminate them would require not just conquest, but the annihilation of every last survivor. And Zithal was no longer certain such a task was possible. The Dominion forces pressed forward, and at last the resistance line broke. Humans scattered, retreating into the ruins. Victory was inevitable here, at least for this battle. His officers raised their claws in triumph, but Zithal remained silent, his eyes still on the ridge where the children had been. They were gone, vanished into the smoke, like seeds blown into the wind. That night, in the war tent erected over the battlefield, Zithal studied the reports. Dominion losses were far greater than projected. Human resistance cells had already regrouped in neighboring regions. Entire villages had risen in arms. Civilians who should have been crushed were now striking supply lines, sabotaging Dominion equipment, vanishing into forests only to strike again. Vekril dared to speak. Supreme Commander, the projections remain clear. Humanity cannot sustain these losses. Their infrastructure will collapse. Their armies will wither. Time favors the Dominion. Zithal turned slowly toward him, mandibles flaring. Does it? Tell me, Adjutant, what collapses first? The body, or the will? Vekril faltered, unsure how to answer. Zithal slammed a clawed fist onto the table, splitting the stone. We can shatter their bones. We can burn their cities. We can drown their lands in blood. But as long as their will endures, they will rise again. Even their larvae face death as play. And you expect me to believe their warriors will ever truly yield? His voice echoed like thunder in the tent. The officers withdrew in silence, leaving him alone with his thoughts. Through the open flap of the tent, he watched the humans bury their dead under cover of night. Even in defeat, they honored the fallen, sang strange low songs, and swore oaths to continue fighting. The children stood among them, holding hands, eyes burning with a fire that seemed far older than their years. And in that moment, Zithal understood something terrible. The Dominion could win battles. Perhaps they could even conquer Earth itself. But to defeat humanity was another matter entirely. For humanity's strength was not in their flesh, nor in their weapons. It was in the unbreakable chain from child to parent, from death to defiance, from weakness to resilience. He had called them weak. Now, watching them rise again and again, he was forced to confront the truth. Humanity's weakness was the source of their strength. Zithal did not sleep. The Dominion war machine was efficient, precise, relentless. Entire continents were falling under their banners. Yet in every shadow of conquest, humans persisted. Reports streamed in, ambushes on convoys, strikes against command posts, even infiltration attempts against Dominion warships. The humans were not just resisting, they were adapting faster than the Dominion could calculate. And worse, they were teaching their children. Zithal had seen it with his own eyes, the little ones running weapons to the front, watching battles with a solemnity far older than their years. They were being shaped by fire, molded by death. In a decade, these children would not be larvae. They would be soldiers born of storms and blood. The thought gnawed at him like acid. When dawn broke over the smoldering horizon, Zithal descended again. This time he went alone, dismissing his guards. He needed no protection. He needed clarity. The battlefield was quiet now, littered with husks of machines and bodies both human and Dominion. Smoke still curled from broken buildings. The air tasted of ash and iron. Zithal moved through the ruins with heavy steps, the weight of revelation pressing down on him. Then he heard it, singing. Soft, human voices carried on the wind. He followed the sound and came upon a half-collapsed church, its windows shattered, its walls blackened by fire. Inside, survivors huddled together, voices rising in defiance. Men, women, and children sang a song of mourning and hope. Their bodies were broken, their numbers few, but their voices filled the ruins as if daring the universe itself to silence them. Zithal stood in the doorway, towering over them, and for the first time in his long life of conquest, he did not feel like a conqueror. He felt like an intruder in the presence of something he could not name. One child noticed him. A boy, no more than 12, with soot smeared across his face and a bandage around his arm. The boy did not scream. Did not run. He simply stared at the massive alien general, eyes unblinking, as if challenging him. Zithal met that gaze. The boy's body was fragile, thin, easily breakable. Yet in his eyes burned a fire that even Dominion steel could not quench. It was the same fire Zithal had seen in the adults, the same fire he had witnessed in children playing amid storms. The general turned away. He could not look any longer. Later, in the command chamber of the Harbinger, his officers awaited his decree. The Dominion expected Earth's conquest to be declared inevitable. They expected the Supreme Commander to order extermination of resistance and full subjugation. But Zithal remained silent for a long time. His clawed hand traced the edge of the star map, the glowing sphere of Earth at its center. Finally, he spoke. You all call them weak. His voice rumbled like distant thunder. You measure weakness by flesh, by bone, by the ease with which we can kill them. But I have walked their world. I have seen their children laugh in the face of death. I have seen their adults rise from ruin, stronger after every fall. Weakness? No. They have turned weakness into a weapon we cannot match. The officers shifted uneasily. None dared interrupt. Zithal's mandibles spread wide. Understand this, we can kill humans. We can destroy their cities, burn their fields, salt their earth. But we cannot defeat them. Because to defeat them, we would have to kill their will. And that, commanders, is beyond us. The chamber was silent but for the hum of the ship's engines. Vekril finally broke it, voice trembling. Then, my lord, what is your order? Zithal looked at the glowing sphere of Earth. For centuries, he had known only conquest. Victory was survival, expansion was destiny. But here, in this fragile species, he saw something that shook the very foundations of the Dominion's creed. Withdraw, he said at last. The word struck the chamber like a blade. Officers hissed, mandibles clattering in shock. One dared to speak. Withdraw? Abandon conquest? My lord, the Dominion has never. Enough. Zithal's voice cracked like a thunderclap. The officer shrank back. Mark my words. If we stay, we will bleed. We will burn. Perhaps we will even win this planet, but we will never hold it. Humanity will rise from every grave we dig, until we ourselves are buried. This war cannot be won. Not against them. The officers were stunned into silence. No one argued further. Zithal dismissed them and stood alone before the star map. His claws trembled as he traced the orbit of Earth. In all his long life, he had never feared an enemy. But tonight, for the first time, he felt the cold weight of inevitability pressing against him. Not the inevitability of Dominion conquest. The inevitability of humanity. As he stared at the fragile blue world, he imagined the children he had seen, climbing cliffs, swimming rivers, laughing in storms. He imagined them grown, hardened by war, carrying the fire in their eyes into the future. He imagined humanity spreading, not just to the stars, but through them, adaptable, unstoppable, inevitable. And he knew with a clarity that shook him to his core, the Dominion was not watching the end of humanity. It was witnessing the beginning of its own.